Okay, this talk's going to be about the inflation, the hidden tax on the dollar. So, the current money system that we're on was started in 1913. The guys that talked Woodrow Wilson into signing this, it was signed on December 23rd, 1913, while Congress was out of session. They had to kill about 500 people, including poisoning a congressman, to let the new thing stand. And it was pushed through. The chief architect on this side was Jacob Schiff, and he was an agent of the Rothschilds. And Woodrow Wilson was the first progressive Democrat, and he thought he was smarter than everybody. He used to be a college professor. He used to run a college. And on his deathbed, he said, "I've killed my country by signing that." Well, it was a little bit too late then, Woodrow. So, at the time, since this date, 1913 to 2018, the U.S. dollar has lost 99% of its purchasing power. Why is that? So we've been printing money up like crazy. We're at $20 trillion in debt now. The more you have of anything, the less actual value it is. Now, some dates to remember. Obviously the Federal Reserve Act in December of 1913. The Bretton Woods Agreement. Towards the end of the war, World War II, wasn't quite over, but it was obvious where the Allies were going to win. So it was agreed. Britain was the world currency at the time, but they were all torn up financially, and so it was decided that the new de facto world currency would be the U.S. dollar, and that's what actually got us out of the Depression. Everybody thinks it was World War II. Yeah, that got us back to going to work, but we were also spending an enormous amount of money on World War II. But when we became the de facto world currency with the Bretton Woods Agreement, that's when we started coming out of it. That's when we became the economic powerhouse. When you were the world reserve currency, you can basically write checks for whatever you want. Now, one way I try to get people to look at it, you can look dryly at stuff on the internet about how much your dollar is lost, but unless you really look at it, and I recommend these, they're called Remember Wins, and they have them for every year. They're mainly for people's birthdays, but they've got facts about the year, and they put ads and all that. They also have the cost of living, and they'll show the average income, what basic food costs, and what basic necessities are. And you can track them over the years and see how much the dollar doesn't buy anymore. So these are pretty cool looking, so I recommend those. Another day you need to keep in mind is after the Bretton Woods, the peak for the United States, the peak for the U.S., where your dollar bought you the most, was somewhere between 1965 and 1966. After that, you only had people just barely, they had one income. They had more kids than they were having on average than they do now, and people could still take vacations. So that was your peak of buying for the average citizen. The next big date was when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. We got called on to trade in dollars for silver by the French, and Nixon, you can watch it on YouTube, where he takes us off the gold standard. And the reason we got off, that they snagged this, LBJ started the Great Society, and the Vietnam War was going on at the same time, so they were printing up way too much money, and the French called us out on it, and Nixon just took us off, and he said, "We're going to go back on it in a little while." Well, they never did. So before that, at least we had gold in Fort Knox. Now remember, in the Great Depression, you couldn't own gold. You had to sell it to the government for $20 an ounce. Well, as soon as they filled up Fort Knox, they immediately jumped it up to $32 an ounce. And that created, the difference in that created the Exchange Stability Fund. and or Economic Stability Fund, and that's still in effect today, and they use that to manipulate currencies and whatnot. Yeah, real money isn't paper. We were on a true fiat currency since since Nixon took us off. This is real money. This is silver and gold. This is a silver Eisenhower dollar. This is real money. So we're on the fiat currency. Well, what could we do to back it up besides have a nuclear weapon? So they decided to do a thing called the petrodollar. So remember at the time, right around this time, the 72 thing with Nixon where he took us off, we also had the Arab oil embargo. Well, people just stopped driving, and that's the only thing the Arabs had. So, you know, they were like, well, what do we do now? Well, it just so happened at the time we were building the Alaskan pipeline to take oil off of the excuse me, the North Slope to the lower 48 states. Well, they found excuse me, just north, right about here, they found this enormous, that's still never been tapped. It's called Gull Island. So everybody was all happy, like, well, you know, once we get this going, this is going to be like 15 years of full, it'll cover the U.S. for 15 years. And this is when cars didn't get any gas mileage for all intents and purposes. But it was thought up by the guy, I call him the Illuminati. There's just the same guys that been running the world for hundreds of years, basically since the Treaty of Westphalia. If you actually want to go back, it's the same guy's been running it since the Battle of Hastings. But anyway, so the main people involved were Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, David Rockefeller, the Queen of England, the Rothschilds, and they all came up with this idea. Well, we'll keep this oil off of the market, and it'll drive the Arabs will buy or be able to pump the oil out of here. Well, we just print money up, and so to keep, we'll use the threat of keeping this oil, because we know we have oil everywhere. FDR knew about shale oil. That's why most of Colorado they didn't know about the fracking everywhere else, but they knew there was an enormous amount of shale in Colorado. And they said, well, we'll keep this off the market, and y'all can keep making your money here, and you'll buy planes and armaments from us, and the military industrial complex will be happy, and we'll export our debt, because now you have to buy at least 10% of your profits. You have to buy T-bills, and that'll export our inflation, and everybody will make money. So that was what was done, and that's why we have all this entanglement in the Middle East. Now, obviously, since around 2008, shale has taken off in the Dakotas, Texas. The world's awash in oil. Hubbard's peak oil is a lie. There's oil everywhere. Not all oil is biotic. There is abiotic oil. Yes, you can make. Yes, oil is made out of dead animals, but it's also a naturally occurring mineral. So that's the birth of the petrodollar. And you know, the oil companies made money. You know, they're always saying, they always call it fossil fuel, and that's, you know, fossil fuel. It keeps the price up because they think there's only a limited amount of it. Well, that was a lie, and who knows how many millions and millions and tens of millions of people have died in this area because of wars that, you know, we stirred up problems in there, and they've stirred up problems themselves. And the Middle East is still front and center on everything, but at least we have our own oil supply. Now, let's talk a little bit about the inflation of the dollar. So they can't even, there's really no way to, only 1% of the entire money supply is actually physical now. The vast majority of it's in cyberspace. So they could actually manipulate the currency quite a bit. Like I said, they don't even list M4. There's the 4 ways you measure money, and each of them corresponds is itself plus the one before it. So there won't be an inflation like there was in Germany before World War II, where they had 22 printing presses that just kept going day in, day out. Most of this stuff is in cyberspace. So that seems all well and good, but there is a Achilles heel to all of this. And the Achilles heel is, I'm going to show you cyber attacks in real time here. These are real-time cyber attacks. They go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we attack them and they attack us. Well, I'm afraid at some point it's going to collapse. Now, what's going to happen when, you know, there are hard prints of everything, but there's only 1% of the money is actually in supply. It's probably actually less than 1%. And we also passed the point of no return in the current money supply in August of 2012, unless they manage to grow our GDP by 10% for the remaining, for about 10 years. That's the only way we can catch up to paying the debt off. And anyway, that's a neat site you can check on. I have it on page 7 of timbosplace.com, and it shows cyber attacks in real time. Like I said, they go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. There's cyber attacks, and so eventually one of the walls are going to go down, and we might lose all of the money in cyberspace. It could happen. So anyway, we're teetering on the brink, and something to keep in mind. But anyway, that's how inflation eats up your money every single year. You can save, you know, savings accounts don't really pay any money anymore. Anyway, that's it. I'm out. And that noisy dog in the background is Snickers, the wonder dog. It's my friend Mike's dog. I'm watching him. He makes a lot of noise for a little dog. Anyway, I'm out.